many years ago. To live life away from it all, to have some sheep, maybe a cow or two, with cats and dogs and goats and an occasional moon. With our love for God, we can't go wrong. Our love can only continue to grow strong. Doesn't matter the difficult roads, it's true, for we have each other and love will carry us through. We came from another time, a time when dreams were bold, another time when values took hold. You couldn't give up hope, for it was always there. Another time we fared to do.
Say hi. Hi. Wave.
We came from another time, a time when dreams were bold, another time when values took hold. You couldn't give up hope, for it was always there. Another time we fared.
I'm glad.
Came from another time, a time when dreams were bold, another time when values took hold. You couldn't give up hope, for it was always there. Another time we fared.
Put the Todd in the tent with me in the ditch. And the feed. I'm at it again. Welcome in. Welcome in. We're so glad to have you in here today. And I am so glad that we had our wonderful guest, Charles from Bushcraft Family, back. I am truly excited to have him because he just was so pleasant to interview and tell his stories. And I'm really excited to have you, Charles.
Thank you.
I want to welcome everybody in. I see Heather and Jennifer and Dana, Copycat, Be Charming, Robin. I think Robin was the first one in here. And I saw Ann. Hi, Ann. How are you all? I know there's more people in here, but that's who's commented so far, and I just want to welcome you all in, and hopefully you'll enjoy the show tonight. I do want to do a couple of housekeeping things, like the meetup, the Ozark meetup. Oh, I hope you're coming. It's going to be so much fun, and I can hardly wait for you to all come. Whether you're a YouTuber or content creator, or whether you're a viewer, you're welcome to come because we would love to meet you. The Ozark meetup is being hosted by Simply Jan Homestead and myself and Gail at Gail's Southern Living. Hello, Gail. I see you just came in. And we are so excited. There's going to be so much fun. There's a jam contest called Jamming It Up. And we're giving out a bug out bag. I mean, how cool is that? How, you get to go to a meetup and have a chance at winning a bug out bag. And it's going to be well worth probably close to $200 when it's done. So, that's reason enough just to drive over if we're not.
Mm.
Anyway, and I hope that you'll go to Simply Jan Homestead's channel and look at her playlist, and Gail Southern Living channel and look at her playlist and my playlist. We all have a playlist with all the meetup information. So it's June 6th through the 8th, and it is at Pomme de Terre State Park. It's going to be a blast, and you're going to miss out on some great, surprising entertainment. That's all I'm going to tell you. That's a secret. Hi, Ariella. Hi, Eric. Welcome in, Grace. How are you? Anyway, so we're going to go ahead and see how Charles is doing. How are you doing, Charles?
Oh, not too bad.
Not too bad.
Yeah. Hopefully next year I'll be able to do some. Well, I do the one here in Ohio, but that's only like 40 miles from me. So,
Yeah.
and it's technically it's a food summit thing where they have guest speakers come in and talk and stuff.
What's the name of that one?
I forget. Here, let me look it up.
Because Ohio is just over the river from me.
Yeah,
Here in
Food
Kentucky.
Independence Summit.
Oh, the
It's
Food
a
Independence.
homesteading event.
Hmm.
Yeah, and it's hosted by the Superb Canning. Well, it used to be just canning lids, but now they do the jars too. So, um,
It sounds
which
like fun, though. It sounds like a lot of information.
yeah, and there's like the big giant YouTubers out there that come and speak to it and stuff like that, and
Oh,
um,
wow.
they do like canning tutorials and stuff showing you how to do it, and
Oh,
there's
nice.
all kinds of different things like dealing with chickens to ducks to
And when do they
making.
normally have that?
That's this year. It's the 18th and the 19th
Of June?
of June. Yeah,
Oh, wow. Wow, that's pretty awesome. Did you hear that? The 18th and 19th? It's in Ohio. Do you
yeah.
know where at in Ohio?
Sugar Creek.
Sugar Creek, Ohio.
Well, not technically Sugar Creek, but right next to it. It's all Amish, so um, you pay to get in, and you get free breakfast, lunch, and dinner thing, and it's all made by Amish, and it's all they don't go to the grocery store and buy the stuff.
Wow. Yeah, I
Yeah,
bet there will be
fermenting.
fermenting there. Yeah. How awesome. That
Yeah, they
sounds
they teach all kinds of different stuff there. They have seminars and the whole shebang.
wow. Oh, I'm gonna have to check that out. I don't know if I'll be able to this year, but next year I'm gonna keep that in mind.
Yeah,
Um, maybe you could just put in the comments the name of it again so that people, type in the comments so that
yeah.
people can be looking for that.
I'll put the website. I think this is the
Oh, thank you. That would be
Seed the
awesome.
Spoon. Yeah, this is it. Um, there you go. And I think they have it for people who stay there. They have from early in the morning all the way till 11, 12 o'clock. So I won't be there that long though.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, that's really neat. I'll have to
Yeah.
check that out. Thank you for oh, is that in the comments there? No, that's mine. Anyway, I just want to welcome everybody in. I know we've missed some, and I'm going to let Charles just talk a little bit about some of the things he never touched on in the first one, or you can touch on them
I
again.
forgot where we left off.
You had told us how you ended up liking to live in the woods because you lived in the woods,
With my grandpa and stuff.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I kind of touched about it in a video or something that I did about um, when I lived with my grandpa. We would go like 6 months and not go to the store because he had all the stuff there. You know, he grew all of his food and harvest stuff from neighbors' animals, and we traded stuff like that.
Wow.
And I remember going to the store, and that wasn't really a store, but it was like woo, you know.
Thank you. Yeah.
Remember when I first started going to school. I think it was like first grade because I skipped kindergarten because my grandpa didn't know about kindergarten, I guess.
Mm.
And um, I said I had to go to the bathroom, and the teacher. This is what the teacher said. She said she looked out the window and she seen me walking back and forth, and she opened the window and what are you doing? And I said I'm looking for the outhouse. And we don't have an outhouse. You go to the bathroom in here. And I'm like, what? So I found out what the running water and all that stuff was.
Wow, that's
It was a
awesome.
big shock to me.
So, why don't you just kind of, for people that haven't been in here and don't know your whole story, how did you end up living with your, just a brief version of how you ended up living with your grandfather?
Well, it wasn't all the time. It was um whenever my mom
Hi, Charles.
uh passed, um my dad went to drinking. That was his way of coping with it and stuff. And he would get in trouble, you know, whatever the fighting in a bar or drinking and driving or whatever the case may be. Um, and I didn't want to go to, you know, foster homes because they're awful places. And a lot of times I would say I wanted to go with my grandpa, and sometimes they would, you know, get a bus ticket or something and send me back, and then I would stay with him for 6 months, a year, or something like that. Um, but the majority of the time, I was still with my dad, and sometimes, like if he got in trouble, I would be in a foster home or whatever, and that's the reason why I I ran away a lot to not go into those places. I would rather live off the street or like the woods because that's what I knew. Because my grandpa would taught me those types of things, you know, starting a fire and keeping it going. And
And you did live in the woods by yourself for how long?
yeah, it was about 8, 9 months.
And he
It,
was, yeah, and your age?
it's around 10, 11, somewhere in that
10, 11
range.
years old,
Yeah.
all that time. I mean, I have thought about that, Charles, from the time I interviewed you last time, thinking, wow, what an incredible kid you must have been. Wow.
Yeah, it was, and it wasn't like I was scared or anything. I would be more scared to be living in a foster home because bad things happen in those places. Not so much just the other kids, but the people who take care of you and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, and I don't think uh, throughout the years, and you can go back in time where, you know, orphanages and foster care and stuff like that. A lot of them are always the same way. It's very bad for kids, and it still surprises me today that it still goes on.
Yeah. It's sad, but it does. It does.
Mhm.
And, you know, You think for as much control as the powers to be have, that they would have control over that. But
Yeah.
so they don't. I don't think they try really.
Yeah. Well, they'll have programs, and it's like the whole bullying thing. You
Yeah.
know, everybody wears the fancy T-shirts and say, "Ooh, we don't allow bullying," and then a week later they allow it. Somebody gets bullied, and they they t- turn the turn their focus somewhere else and say, "Oh, you're just overreacting," or something like that, and it is what it is.
Yeah. It really is. So I saw a comment by Heather, and she wanted to know what your first job was.
My first job,
Hmm.
probably carnival. I grew up on the carnival, so
Tell us
that's
about all of that.
and well, my dad and my uncle were both uh, original what they call carnies. They have their own language and everything. Um, there's there are different sayings for like tearing down and going to the next city, and if there's somebody bad in the area, you say a word and everybody goes to help you. Um, that was probably my first job, was working in a what they call a joint, which is a concession stand where you try to get money for them to win a stuffed animal or something, be it throwing darts or knocking over milk cans or something like that.
That sounds like a fun job. So you got to
Uh,
see the inside of the carnival
it is,
working.
yeah, and still to this day, if um, like if I didn't have any money or anything, I would just, if I seen a carnival, I could go talk to them and tell them, do you have a spot open and I could make money? Um, the and right now there is not very many, hardly any now, what you call a carny. There are some that come along and do the life for a couple years, but there's nobody that actually knows what a carny is too much anymore.
Yeah.
They're It's a dying breed.
Yeah.
In my family, I'm probably the last one, because my dad and my uncle have passed already. But um, and that years ago, I was heading to saved up some money and I bought a motorcycle, and I was going to head to, and I was living in Ohio. I was going to head to back to Arizona because I just love that area. And um, this freak storm came out of nowhere, and it was pouring down rain so bad that I ended up turning around going back. And as soon as I walked through the door, my uncle called. Haven't seen him in years. He was living in another state somewhere or whatnot, and he just showed up. And he said, um, he always called me Chucky and said, "Is Chucky there?" And I picked up the phone, and it was my uncle. And yeah. And he says, "I'm thinking about going on the road again." He said, "You want to join me?" And I said, "Sure." And those, and probably a month later, that's how I met my wife.
Wow.
uh, was at a carnival, and um, that was, it seems odd, but that was my way of, I made more money off of women than I did guys, because at that time I had the long hair, and you know, I looked I looked the part, I guess.
Yay.
and and I, you know, she never spent any money, but she hung around and we started talking and got to know each other, and then she came on the road with me, and then that's how it all started. And I think it's weird how God's plan pops up and you don't even know it.
Yeah.
Um, the fact that there's a freak storm, that it was sunny as could be, and all of a sudden a storm out of nowhere comes and makes me turn around, and you know how things work out. It's
It's totally how things work out, isn't it?
yeah.
Wow.
And I tell the kids, I say, you guys were so close to not being here, not being born. Said, if I was like 50 miles down the road, I would have just kept on going. But it was that weird storm.
So how old were you when you met your wife?
I believe about 22, 23. Yeah. And at the time I wasn't sure. I may before we were talking the first night, and then she said she was going to come the next day to. I said we're going to go out and get something to eat. I said, make sure you bring your ID, because she was 19, but she didn't. She was young looking, so I was
Yeah.
like, I don't want to get in trouble.
Wow. Wow. So what states did you travel to the carnival with?
All of them.
Really?
Yeah, I've
Did
been
you
to
have
every state except for Hawaii. I've been to Alaska, but I don't quite remember it too much. But I remember being up there. It wasn't wintertime. I know that much. But the, the only thing I remember is running around trying to get away from the bugs, because the bugs were horrible. That's the thing I remember about Alaska.
Wow.
I ate so many bugs, and I had bugs in my nose and my eyes, and it was horrible. I was like,
Yeah.
how does anybody live up here?
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I hear that all the time, the bugs. And
Yeah.
you just wouldn't think that there'd be that many bugs as cold as it is in Alaska. But there's a lot of bugs.
Yep. I've been to Jamaica, some small islands uh, off the Bermuda area, that they had carnivals, and we would travel over there, from East Coast to West Coast. And like I said, some of those carnivals that are they were like 50, 75 years old back then,
Wow.
um, are no more. I like West Coast shows. I don't know if they're still around, but um, that was one of the first times, my dad and me. Um, he was he wasn't married. He was shacked up. I'll put it that way. Shacked up, and uh, ended up leaving her and giving her all the house and everything. We ended up leaving, and it was in Eureka, California, and we went and traveled all the way down Route 101, and um, we started running out of money, so we came across a carnival. So my dad got a job as um, uh, what they call lucky strike. It's a little red circle on a board that you had to put a quarter in it. You throw a quarter up, and
Oh, yeah, I think I remember that.
Yeah, and I was so young I wasn't allowed to work in a concession in California, but I could work in a what they call a grab joint, which
Yeah.
is a food trailer, and it was uh, corn dogs. We sold corn dogs, pop, and a couple other things. And when I started working there, there was other corn dog places there, and it was he did so bad, but I got paid by a salary, and I told him, I said, if you double my salary, I'll I'll triple what you make,
Oh
and
wow.
because I was used to calling people in, you know,
Yeah.
because that's what you do in a concession,
Carnival. Yeah.
but not a food place. So I was sitting there, I started calling people in, telling them we have the freshest corn dogs and this and that.
Mm.
And he started making all kinds of money.
Oh wow.
And I invented a new corn dog. It sounds bad, but um, at the end of the night, we had maybe a few dozen corn dogs left over. And normally he would throw them away. And I said, well, why don't we do this? And I dipped the old corn dog with the cornmeal on the outside back in the batter and refried it, and it was a jumbo corn dog, so it was bigger, and they sold like hotcakes. Um, they didn't people didn't realize they were eating a day old corn dog, but they went like crazy, and we charged them twice as much for day old corn dogs. And he ended up,
Makes me want to go out and eat all kinds of food at the carnival when the fair comes.
yeah, and he said he kept trying to get me to go on the the road with him. Said that he's made more money with me, and I was just a little kid at the time,
Yeah.
and I told him no, because we were heading toward Florida. I don't know why at the time, but that's where we were headed. Um, After we got out of there, unfortunately, my dad stopped at Pomona, California, and all the money he made, he drank it up in the bar because he's waiting for family members that used to live in California, Pomona, California. And I just hung out at the Circle K, playing video games and stuff, and I kept my money. I didn't spend my money, and except for eating and a few games and stuff. But um, on the after he didn't have any money left, we ended up. Uh, I actually bought a car. I just mentioned corn dog hamburgers for breakfast.
I'm sorry. I just saw that. I can't. Yeah. So you guys know what we're feeding you.
Yeah, we
Oh.
ended up buying an old Oldsmobile with what money I had left, and we made it through Arizona and New Mexico and started getting into Texas when the car died, and then we had to hitchhike. And I still remember um, this freak storm, one of those weird storms. I could see it in the distance, the direction we were going, and all you seen it was blue skies everywhere except for this big black cloud that was right over the horizon. And I knew we were going into that. And for
Oh my god.
Texas, that's
Oh
one of the
my gosh.
coldest
How
I've ever been.
terrifying.
And we got through the storm and everything because we were in a back of a El Camino
Ugh.
in the bed and just froze. And then we got up to Dallas, Texas, where you're not allowed to hitchhike. So we ended up to get off of there, we had to go around the outside of Dallas so we went over the northern side of the big ring. We had to walk all the way around, and then as soon as we got to the other side of the main freeway, we could hitchhike again. And I remember it was like about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was so tired. It was pouring down rain, and I had me a 2-man tent that I kept with me, and I laid it on the side of the road and fell asleep while cars are going by, and my dad's up there hitchhiking, and that's where I slept that night, soaking wet. I was just tired after that long walk. Yeah, it was a mess.
So what was your scariest event, traveling around as a kid like that? What was the scariest thing you remember in the carnival that may have happened,
Well, right after that, we ended up getting into Shreveport, Louisiana, and it was an actual state fair. And we got in there, it was probably about 1 o'clock in the morning. And it was probably, I'm thinking it was probably around maybe March or something, February, March time. And it was so cold. We didn't have blankets. All we had is that tent. And we set up at the fairgrounds. We couldn't see anything. It was pitch black there. And we set up, and it was so cold. Whenever I'm out in the cold or something, and I get that cold feeling, it brings back memories of being so cold. That's the coldest I've ever been. And it's weird that I've lived in Ohio, I've lived in Idaho and places like that. And to this day, the coldest I've ever been was in Shreveport, Louisiana, of all places.
Wow, of all places.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been there when it's like it's like the hottest place I've ever
Yeah.
been.
And another time I was really cold, which you can probably, this year, is bent over because it got frostbite
Oh wow.
in Florida. I've like I said, I've been in very cold states and never got frostbite. And
Wow,
I
that's
got
crazy.
frostbite. My pinky toes got frostbite, and my ear got frostbite. So it's kind of wonky.
You know what amazes me is that, for at least Jan and I, and probably some others in the chat, you could have been in our town at our carnivals.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
crazy. It's just crazy because I remember seeing kids that worked in the carnival. The carnival, the fair was one of the most exciting things. We looked forward to it all year long.
Yeah.
And just tickled me to go to the fair. Everybody looked forward to that because it truly was another time.
Oh,
Speaking
yeah.
of that, let me go ahead and play this new song, everybody, and give Charles a break here. I have a new song that I wrote, and I thought it's so appropriate for this show. So here we go. Hope you enjoy. Leave your comments.
We grew up when fishing in a hole and swimming in a lake was what you did. Riding bikes and roller skates, dances at the Grange, laying in the shade. We grew up with Vietnam Nam, hippie love, and the Brady Bunch when hip huggers were cool and we had a curfew. We lived in another time, a time of freedom, the time of our life. Another time was important, and your name was all you had. When you stood proud and waved the flag, men were men and boys were boys. We grew up in another time. We grew up with a garden and faded jeans from bucking hay, playing in dirt, and t-shirts were your favorite when everyone had a set of Sunday clothes and the fair we looked forward to all year long. We grew up in another time, another time. We grew up in another time when integrity was important and your name was all you had. When you stood proud and waved the flag, men were men and boys were boys. We grew up in another time. We grew up in another time when integrity was important and your name was all you had. When you stood proud and waved the flag, men were men and boys were boys. We grew up in another time. We grew up in another time.
So that's my new song. I'm going to figure out how to get it on here, as you know, make a video with it. But I started to. I struggled with getting it to save correctly. So I'm going to have to ask somebody about that, because I'm technologically
Get
insufficient.
a program that's called Video Proc.
Video proc.
Yeah, it's free.
Okay.
Anybody can download it and use it, and there's no watermarks or any of that stuff. It's all free.
Yeah, because it would not take my InShot videos, you know, on my regular
Yeah.
editor. It just wouldn't take it. And so, yeah, I'm glad you all like the song, and it just suits what this is all about, and reflecting and reminiscing on the lives of the people in our our channels we love. And so I'm going to turn it back over to Charles and let him continue, because we just love listening to him.
Kids, technically I have 7 that I know of. I was
The
bad
Rolling
when
Stone.
I was bad when I was it was the 80s. The first one I know of, we were both under the age. Even though I was living on my own. I had my own car and the whole shebang. And she lived in Mesa, Arizona, and I lived in Phoenix. And her parents were quite rich, and didn't want her associated with me. And at that time, it was I had to sign papers over saying that I wouldn't have custody or anything like that.
Wow.
And she ended up naming the baby after me.
Oh, wow.
Different last name and everything, but always wondered maybe one day he would try to find me or something. You never know. But other than that, had my girlfriend that we traveled from Phoenix to Tennessee to New York, and then that's where I had my first daughter in New York, Milton, I think it was, New York, um, and things didn't work out. We were both too young and everything, and then I met my wife and had 5 kids with her, and um, they're all raised and everything now, their own families, and I got the grandkids and all that. I think I'm up to 11 grandkids right now.
Wow, that's nice. Congratulations. Wow. Any other questions for Charles? I know you all have to have some questions. I'm watching the chat. Okay.
Well, I seen
Hi,
Ziggy
Langley. Still.
put in there that, because I've talked about it before, uh, the earthquake in '89 in California
Yeah.
during the World Series. I was actually there.
Oh,
I was
wow.
I was selling hot dogs and pop at the time,
Yeah.
and I ended up staying there for almost 3 weeks to help out, even though I didn't have any training or anything. But which, being there after the first week, I already knew how to take blood pressure and the pulse rate and stuff like that, and put sea collars on, and um, use tourniquets and stuff like that, because it was bad the first week. Um, and then after that, we had what they called squads of people that would go um, door to door to these houses and apartment complexes and stuff, and search through there, see if there were survivors or remains.
Well,
Yeah, me
so
myself, I didn't think it was that bad. Just shaking around a little bit, but when we got out of the stadium, because it was during the World Series
yeah,
in
I
Oakland.
remember that. I remember when it happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. What was the worst and best food you were fed for meals as a kid?
Um, Probably I always go back to my grandpa's what he would call flapjacks, but they're oversized pancakes. He had this giant um, cast iron skillet, and he would throw in butter or bacon grease, and then he would almost fill this thing with would be one pancake, and he would syrup. We didn't have it, didn't have no fancy bottle of Aunt Jemima, or which they don't have those anymore either, but
Would he make syrup out of sugar?
sugar
Mm,
and depending on what time of the year it was, because we would have uh, a lot of people from the area would come together and boil down maple syrup,
yeah.
and we would put it in jars. But a lot of times it was vanilla, sugar, and water until it thickens up, and that would be sugar or syrup.
Wow. Yeah. I when I was raising my kids, we were quite poor, and so I just make them sugar syrup.
Yeah,
Burn the sugar and turn it brown. They never knew the difference.
yeah, and a lot of times
It's
they'll
pretty
miss
good.
that because
Yeah.
you get the syrup nowadays, and
It
it's
doesn't get
horrible
like that. Yeah.
unless you want to spend uh like $10-20 on a little bottle of maple syrup. um Most of it's just awful tasting.
Yeah. It
Yeah,
really is.
he would make sassafras syrup.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that stuff was really good.
Yeah. It really is. So what was your most valuable skill you learned over the years of growing up?
Um, I I don't think it. I guess it could be a skill. In this, and it's kind of like a Gen X type of thing. Is it's not that it kind of sounds bad when you put it. Just don't
When you
care.
say it,
Yeah, you know
you just don't care.
nowadays uh, people say stuff and it gets blown out of proportion. Back in the 80s, somebody called you a name or something, okay, and you'd go move on,
Because you were raised, sticks and stones will break
Yeah,
your bones, but names will never hurt you.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's just I don't know. They don't know that anymore. It's just like, oh, you called me this, or you have to call me they, or and I don't care what you are, just, don't
Yeah.
force it on me
Don't force it on me and
or my
don't
kids.
and yeah, and just let me love you for who you are.
Mhm.
And don't make me try to change the entire English language because you don't like it. I mean, that's basically how I see it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I remember the alphabet, the LGB, whatever it is now, but,
mhm.
um, the they made that so that um, they wanted to be treated like everybody else, but I'm like, "Well, why do you have to have a special abbreviation for your group? Just be who you are, And from that it's grown so much that they're almost another. I hate to say it, another race or
Yeah.
another being.
Well, I think with you, Charles, and with myself, what you see is what you get. Some days you see me a mess. Some days you see me cleaned up. And so, you know, Charles is Charles, and I hope that you appreciate that. So,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, I'm really like that too. If you don't like me, don't watch me. If you do, then that's good too. But yeah,
Well,
I'm not
I
going to force
remember
myself on anybody.
as a kid, um, like if I wasn't in school at the time, we would go out and you wouldn't come home until it was dark.
hmm
And nowadays, if you told your kids to go out and play and not come in until the streetlights come on, you would be arrested for abusing your kid.
Yeah, I mean, it truly is a different time. We live in
Yeah.
another time from what we were grown up with, and I think you're so right, Grace. Labels do nothing but divide people, and so we need to
Hmm.
really learn to love each other just to love each other. I mean, look at beyond what you see, and like look at all the things that Charles has shared that takes him beyond what you see.
I've like um in California. I lived in California for a good while. I actually lived in Watts, and that's at that time it's as bad as it is now.
Where's
And I
Watts
was
at? I was
it's
born in Bishop, so I don't know where Watts is, but I was born in
it's
Bishop, California.
it's it's like Compton and different
Oh,
areas of LA.
oh,
Um, I think they call it district or something like that. But
yeah.
um, I lived with my friend from school because my dad got in trouble, and uh, I lived with his grandma. My
Thank you,
friend's
Grace.
parents I won't go into details about what happened to my friend or anything because
Yeah.
it's bad. But his parents, he didn't know who his dad was. His mom um, came to, drug overdose and stuff. And he lived with his grandma, and I lived with his grandma for um, almost a year. Well, it was probably over a year because I remember going to school and then getting out for summer vacation. And our biggest thing was because the house that she had right next door was a vacant lot that had some old cars, and that was our fun time was playing in them cars.
Yeah.
And when I went to school, I was the only white kid in the school, and I never. You would think that you would. I would have got picked on all the time and stuff. I never had any trouble with anybody the whole time I went to school there, and it's I think it's all how you perceive your environment. Like if
Exactly.
I just didn't care, it was
Yeah.
unless you did something to me or my friend or something, then it wasn't no big deal.
And having lived around, 'cause I lived in 66 homes as a child. 66 different locations. I've been around too,
Yeah.
and when you move around a lot, you realize, and you tell me if I'm wrong, if this wasn't the case for you, Charles, is that, yeah, 66, is that you really get a sense of everywhere you go, people are people, and
Mhm.
people hurt, and they're sad and they're happy and they are just struggling and doing what you're trying to do, and you really see, and it doesn't matter if you go across the world, you're going to see the same thing.
Mhm.
And because I have been in other countries, I lived in Germany, and you just get this sense of you're just one of this little piece of this great big puzzle, just trying to make it like everybody else.
Yeah. I used to get I was jealous and I would be mad at the richer people and the rich kids and stuff. They got all these fancy
Mhm.
clothes and stuff until I realized that um, I actually started feeling sorry for them because they didn't have any life experience. Everything's given to them.
Yeah.
Um, you may think that they have a better life and everything, but when it comes down to it, um, it's almost like their life is scripted to be, I do this in school and I get a fancy brand new car and I get paid to go to college and then
Yeah.
I come home and work for mom and dad.
And you learn to feel sorry for them
Yeah.
because they have no clue. I mean, they really have no clue how much life has, how much there is in life to value.
Hmm. And then you hear about you know they get into drugs, alcohol, or they fool around with their spouse, and um,
Yeah, just
their the end result is the total opposite. You know, they have all these depression problems and stuff because everything. And I'm not
yeah,
an expert on it or anything, but I think it's just because they didn't have any experience in any of this stuff. It's just you know everything's given to them, and they had whenever they get in trouble, they call mom and dad, and they get them out of trouble and stuff like that. And it's
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Well, if you give everything to a child when they're young, you're going to have, raise an entitled adult. And that's one of the biggest problems today is that,
Hmm. Nowadays, if you make your kid do chores or something, that's form of abuse, evidently.
Yeah. I can't even imagine. I just
Yeah,
can't even imagine. I would not want to raise a, a child today.
that's why I
I
like, the homesteaders.
they
You watch
don't,
them with their kids, and the kids are out there working, and they're not like forcing them to, get down there and dig them taters or whatnot. They do it because they want to. It's part of their livelihood.
yeah, yeah. Well, it is truly a different time, and I personally thank God for the life He gave me. Sure, I had
Mhm.
trials and tribulations and went through heartache and stuff like that. But when you go through those things and you go through them a lot, I think you either learn to embrace them and get the good out of it, or you become a bitter person. And I was never one to become a bitter person. I didn't want to be a bitter, angry person because I see those people and I'm like, oh my gosh, they grow up, they grow old and be lonely, and nobody would want to visit them and stuff like that.
Mhm.
I could never, I just couldn't do that, and it broke my heart for them. And I knew somewhere inside those people just wanted to be loved, but they didn't know how to let go of the bad things that had happened to them, and all the hurt and the pain and the sorrow and everything else. And but if you really just learn to embrace that, I
Yeah,
can guarantee God's going to show you the good out of it.
yeah. You'll notice there's like a trend to that.
Yeah.
Once the kid gets so old, they start resenting the parent
Yeah.
because instead of showing love and nurturing and stuff, it was, oh, here, have this,
Yeah.
and they end up doing the same thing to their kids, and it's a cycle thing.
I think it's abuse not to teach a kid how to do things and not take care of themselves. Yeah. Let
Hmm.
them start making decisions when they're young. You know, they want to go outside without their coat on. Let them go outside without their coat on. Give them the choice. Look, if you insist on going out, you're going to get cold. If they don't learn behavior with consequences, they'll never learn.
Yeah, that's like touching a hot stove is one of the best teaching things. I'm not saying to do that, but
Yeah.
there's safe ways to do it.
Yeah. There's safe ways to do it.
Yeah. Um, and you guarantee they won't touch it again because they know, ooh, that's a
Exactly.
no.
Exactly. Exactly. So let's give Charles a few more questions out there. Put him on the spot. Let's see. I know Heather's got to have some more questions. She's good at questions, coming up with questions. She's a curious, curious person, which I appreciate. Okay, Jennifer has one. What was the worst gift
Yeah.
you got as a child?
Um. Well, believe it or not, my wife is the first one that threw me a birthday party. I never
Oh,
had a birthday before that. A birthday party. Cake and ice cream, the whole
yeah.
thing. It was just, here's $20 or happy birthday or something like that. Worst, I have no idea. Um, I have no idea.
Heather wants to know if you're dating.
No, no, no.
No, Heather. How difficult for you was it raising so many kids?
Um, I don't know. I, I see other people that has one or two kids, and they have both parents and they're saying how hard it is to raise their kid and stuff. And I'm like, huh? I don't, I don't think it was, like hard or anything. I was just making sure that they had food and a roof over their head, and that was my main thing. And then they went to school at the same place because that was my thing. Because I would go like a month for technically the very last grade that I completed was second grade. Most of the time I went to a school and I was there for a month, and then we would move to another city or a state, and I would go for a couple more weeks or a month or 2 months, and then we'd go on the road, and then the next year I would go to school again, but it was the next grade because back then records weren't on computers. You just went in there and said, what grade did you, what was the last grade that you did? And my dad would always add a grade. So
Wow.
that was my schooling. But like I said, I learned most my stuff on my own instead of from a book or something. Even though I like, reading and stuff like that.
Yeah. Jennifer wants to know what your plans are for the next 10 years.
Well, I don't plan stuff because anytime you plan anything, it never works out. So I just kind of go with the flow.
I like that. Any sport before now?
Oh, I was really big in sports. When I was in uh, Los Lumis, New Mexico, um, I started playing uh, baseball, and I was actually a really good pitcher. And the coach started teaching me how to do curves and stuff, and I thought it was really cool. But I wasn't developed enough for um, um, throwing curves because you have to have a lot of mass in your shoulders to do that.
Hmm.
And I got to there was this program where
Okay, Ginger.
some of the best athletes in New Mexico, Arizona, and California all came together, and um, the scouts and everybody could go check out and whatnot. And I actually threw a strike on Ken Griffey Jr.
Oh, wow.
Um, Unfortunately, the next ball he knocked out of the park, but he didn't think I could throw that hard, and he was surprised. And he actually came up to me and said that was one of the best pitchers in that thing workout program that he went up against, because everybody else he just plastered the ball, and he was like shocked when that ball went by him.
Wow. Wow.
And that's why I always say I threw a strike on King Griffey Jr. and then leave out the rest where he knocked a home run in the next pitch. But I did get to play minor league. I was the youngest one to ever play. Albuquerque Dukes was the baseball team, and it was maybe three games, and they were all home games, and then went back to school
Oh,
and
nice.
threw out my shoulder and said I could. All I have to do is get a surgery where they'd open up the top part of my shoulder and then refasten one of the ligaments. And I said no,
Wow. Wow.
which I feel it now because I can actually pop my shoulder out and pop it back in.
Wow.
um, but at the time, I didn't think I was going to be around that area much longer. And because my dad had actually got in trouble again, and I lived by myself for probably 6 months until all the money ran out, and then I moved in with uh, the coach for a good while. The same coach that had me throwing curveballs before I was ready. Um, and to think about it now, I was just a ticket, a lunch ticket for him,
Yeah.
because if he could get me signed for somewhere, he could get kickbacks for it. But because he tried talking me into it and everything, and he would say, "Well, if you don't get um, that surgery, you're not going to be able to play baseball anymore." And I said, "That's fine." He said, "Well, you're going to have to find a new place to live," and trying to pressure me into it and stuff.
Wow. Wow. Two more questions, and then we're probably going to have to call it. And that, because we're like 6 minutes over. But what's your greatest achievement that you feel is your greatest achievement? And are you still looking for land?
Always looking for land. I feel if God wants me to have it, he'll do it for me. As far as it's my kids. That's the easiest one there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think,
I've done a lot of things, you know. Um, I've won bowling tournaments to uh, opening for a band that was on MTV. um, I threw a strike on Ken Griffey Jr., and I've done all kinds of stuff like that. Um, dated some 80s stars that probably wouldn't remember who I was at this time. But back then it was cool.
I'm gonna share something hilarious with you. Okay. I went on a date with Doink the Clown, the uh, uh, WWF wrestler. If you want to look him up, it's horrible. When I was 14, 15, something like that. Okay, Doink the Clown. Check him out. That's
Yeah.
awesome, Charles.
I still I was sitting here watching, going through memories and stuff, and I was watching, it was on Amazon. I was watching a documentary on the Go-Go's, and um, they were doing a backstage thing to where they were filming, and they had pictures of what was going on backstage. And I about I was drinking a pop or something, and came across a picture where I seen myself. I said, "That's me," and I rewind it, and the kids all looked at it. And,
That's
no,
funny.
because I had, if you remember Motley Crue,
Yeah.
that's how my hair was. It was. I used to go through ordeal just to make my hair look like that, because I
Wow.
didn't have no stylist or anything to do that.
Hmm.
I would hang upside down like a bat while my hair was wet, and put gel in it, and then let it dry, and then go like that, and it would stick up all over the place.
Two more questions. Jan wants to know what was the catalyst that made you decide to make your negative situation a positive and strive for the best life possible?
Um, I just I don't like to dwell on the negative stuff. It just, you know, I used to think like, and this, it wasn't always that way, because I had some bad times in the 80s to where I did the drugs and alcohol and stuff, Um, and bad things happen if you get mad at something, or you lose a job, and there's people that will be torn up about it, and they'll drag it on forever and ever again. And it's like, in 10 years, are you going to remember that?
Yeah.
Or is it going to be something that's going to be your greatest accomplishment of life, is that negative thing? And stuff happens, and just kind of, let it go and move on to the good stuff.
Exactly. Exactly. And one last question. What was your favorite state you lived in? And I think I got them all.
Uh, it, Probably Phoenix. I had the most fun when I lived in Phoenix, Arizona. Um, Now, as part of, I lived in Tucson too. That was pretty cool. Vegas, that whole area. I didn't like California too much. California it was okay, but I really didn't like it too much. And it's even worse now. um, I liked living up in Idaho. Always liked to where, if you see a river or something and you can see the fish swimming by,
Yeah.
um,
Idaho's beautiful that way.
that and New York has some of the best. That's where when I lived in the woods for a bit, um, I could see the fish. I could see there was a nice pool. Even the bears that would come by, they would go in that area because they could snag them a fish whenever they wanted to.
Yeah.
Um, and that was, and when I was a kid, that's one of my favorite things was fishing. So being able to, and I used to get up in a tree and dangle bait above the water and dip it in the water a little bit and watch the fish come up and grab it. And that was my fishing when I didn't have a fishing pole.
Yeah. That's awesome. Charles, I want to thank you so very, very, very much for coming on again. And you're a real pleasure. It's just such a pleasure to have you on here. And I want to thank you. And if anybody isn't subscribed to Charles, be sure to go over and subscribe to him at Bushcraft Family. Make sure you hit the thumbs up, um, turn on the notifications on both of our channels, and yeah, just thank you so much for all of you
Well,
coming in.
thank you for having me up here.
Yeah, I truly appreciate it. And like I said, for all of you that came in late, there is a meetup. If you live close to Pomme de Terre State Park in Missouri, it's called the Ozark Meetup. And make sure you go over there June 6th through the 8th. There's going to be several channels over there. And we want to have some viewers come and join us. And it's going to be a lot of fun. There's camping spots, there's cabins that still may be available. And so please check it out. Pomme de Terre State Park. If you're interested, come see us. You can come up for the day. You can just come up for the day. We're doing a giveaway. We have a seed swap table and a jam contest. We're playing games. We're doing karaoke. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. And yeah, so if you live in that area or a state away, and you can make it a day trip or something, just come on up and join us. And so we can meet you. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, it's nice
Excuse
when
me.
you can meet your fans and stuff.
Oh,
Your
yeah,
your
yeah.
channel
Oh,
supporters.
Grace, thank you for subscribing. I think you said she's subscribed. Yes, make sure you hit the thumbs up button and please just make sure you support Charles's channel. He's got an awesome channel And if you want to know anything about prepping and all kinds of stuff on Charles's channel, you can go find out. Okay? So thanks again. And I am going to end it here with a closeout. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
We had a dream many years ago to live life away from it all, to have some sheep, maybe a cow or two, with cats and dogs and goats and an occasional moon. With our love for God, we can't go wrong. Our love can only continue to grow strong. Doesn't matter the difficult roads, it's true, for we have each other and love will carry us through. We came from another time, a time when dreams were bold, another time when values took hold. You couldn't give up hope, for it was always there. Another time we fared to do.
Say hi. Hi. Wait.
We came from another time, a time when dreams were bold, another time when values took hold. You couldn't give up hope, for it was always there. Another time we fared.
I'm glad.
Came from another time, a time when dreams were bold, another time when values took hold. You couldn't give up hope, for it was always there. Another time we fared.
Put the pod in the tent with me in the pit. And her feet. I'm at it again.